Matsy, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Absolute Wonder Woman #3. And this is written by Kelly Thompson, art by Hayden Sherman, and colorist Jordi Belair. Always got to shout out the colorist, particularly for this series. So the Harbinger was the big bad in the last one. Harbinger's gone, uh, and now the big ultimate uh, showdown boss is here, called the Tetracide. It's like a world-eating chthonic force that Wonder Woman has to fight, and it's Diana's true enemy. It's going to take everything she has to save Gateway City from oblivion from the Tetracide, and we get a lot of great backstory with her bow as well. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. #3, it was pretty packed for 24 pages. Twitless, what did you think?
I was on the fence, and I was
Mm,
really on the fence with this one, but I am starting to like this a lot. I am really enjoying this. This take,
interesting.
I don't, I'm not. I was surprised actually by how much I was enjoying it. But they really are taking Wonder Woman in some interesting directions. She starts the fight by saying, "This thing's going to kill me." By the way,
Mhm.
I'm going to try and minimize the loss of life, but the minute I face this thing, I'm going to die. And so, as opposed to the sort of girl bossing that has gotten kind of old, we have this very powerful Amazon like walking into a fight with a sort of not defeatist mentality, but like this inevitability. And so, like, it really recontextualizes some of the things that assumptions that some people have regarding, I think, Wonder Woman in some ways. But in addition to just some of that thematic stuff, you get to see Wonder Woman fight a really awesome looking Cthulhu monster, a Lovecraftian horror, and the Lovecraftian horror is treated seriously. There's no ironic jokes. There's not her going like, "Oh my gosh, did I just totally like lasso Cthulhu with my mind?" Uh, like, there's none of that like stuff that like undermines what's going on. This is treated straight. This is an
Mhm.
abomination from hell. It's going to kill everyone, and she doesn't really stand a snowball's chance of hell of actually facing it on even ground. She's going to do her best because that's what heroes do. And then, like, I'm right back in it. You got me. This is all I wanted from superhero fiction. I wanted people to be genuine, to take things seriously, and for cool stuff to happen. And I'm not saying this is a perfect book. I have some complaints, but I am surprisingly being won over by this. It's actually might be one of my favorite of might be my heart goes to Superman, but Absolute Wonder Woman might it's really
It's doing things.
strong. It's doing things.
Yep, I have to agree. Actually, this has been one of my favorite issues in the Absolute series thus far. I was
Oh,
impressed
wow.
that Kelly Thompson pulled this off because
Yeah, I know.
the last two issues like lagged so hard and were meandering and not going anywhere, and like the plot structure was just so poorly constructed. But this one, it stuck the landing. It had intensity. Um, it had stakes, and it wasn't clear that Wonder Woman was going to actually come out the victor in the end. She was actually presented as being, as you mentioned, Twitless, very vulnerable here. She went through quite a lot of struggle to be able to overcome this adversity, and everything was treated very seriously. She exposed her willingness to sacrifice herself and what she did to be able to rescue Steve from hell. The only problem I had is that we never had a proper buildup to all of the trials and tortures that this issue alluded to, of her time in hell and growing up there and how she learned to survive. And it suggested very heavily that there was quite a huge obstacle in her upbringing in that environment. But that was never presented in the previous issues. Here, she's somebody who's already been very well adapted and knows how to handle herself quite effectively with all of those challenges and all of those beasts and monsters. And she brings this vulnerable figure from another world into that setting, and then to be able to free him from there, which she sees as a calling for herself, her true destiny to do this, gives up her own arm to actually free this man from this confinement that she's called her home for so long. So it was all the things that we wanted to see represented in the first 2 issues actually delivered upon here. It's better than any of the Absolute Superman issues so far. Apologies,
Mhm.
Footless. That run has just been dismal, and, better than the majority of the Absolute Batman issues, I would say. It hit quite hard. Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, a fourth book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
Modern day, classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl, issues 1 through 5, now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. There was a bit of a meme going around this past week of Spy X Family. Like, why do people really fall in love with an incredibly powerful, dynamic, deadly, feminine hero who's just super sweet on her guy? You know, like she could probably kill him, but she's just super loyal and does the right thing, you know, self-sacrificially to help him out. And like, why does that click? You know, why do people not say, "Oh, she's a Mary Sue," or "Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, why is she just overpowered?" Like none of that matters because of how she is oriented towards other characters, particularly love interests. What does that do to transform that same like paradigm?
Yours a
And
bit of
it's
your
just
your
that.
yours a bit of a ditz as well, and so the idea is the fact that she's got a skill set that's very, powerful, but she also has areas where she's lacking, and so that makes
Mhm.
her part of a larger whole, which is that family, right?
Yes.
Old school X-Men knew how to do this, which is, not just having one character or having female characters just like dominate. It was like, there was push and pull.
Mhm.
And I think they Kelly Thompson has put a little bit of push and pull on this version of Diana.
Think
I would
so.
argue, I think Tom King did a little bit in his run. I think Kelly Thompson's doing a better job in some ways. Um, the thing I will complain about is I think that the way the men are portrayed in this comic are still so simpering at times. They're part of this the climax of this book. She's getting ready to cast this spell, and there's like two journalists on top of the building, and she kind of like tells them to do something, which is fine, but like the way they act is just so subservient, and it's just kind of like this is not how like Steve Trevor, whether the way he's drawn or the way he acts, like they really make the guys act really just like testosterone deficient,
Yeah,
which is
he's a
just
little bit of a pet in hell, to be honest. Like he
yeah.
asked for
Sure.
permission to, go beyond the front porch.
Can I leave the porch, please?
Yeah.
It was just like, come on, like you can have the original comics knew how to do this, where Steve was not as strong as Diana, but Steve did everything he could as a military man. Diana could do so much more than he could, and he would acknowledge that, but he wasn't just like a simpering little cuckold.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, little, on a purse string or whatever it is. But yeah, I
Yeah.
agree that there's an inability to write the male characters effectively
Yeah.
in this dynamic. For some reason, they do have to be spineless weenies
Yeah.
in the presence of Diana to make her seem powerful, which kind of
Yeah.
also defeats the purpose of her, place as this Amazonian figure, this representation of um, deserved empowerment that she's supposed to present to the world, and it's it's diminishing. It's actually diminishing for Diana, quite frankly. It doesn't make her seem all that powerful when she's only strong in the presence of weak figures. So the way she handles the conflicts, though, is very interesting. She does appeal to the better natures of a lot of the demons that she confronts. So that's in keeping with the character. I would
Mhm.
argue that this has been the best reimagining of a DC canonical character thus far in the absolute line. I don't like what they're doing with Superman at all. Batman has misdirections and doesn't really seem to know what it wants to do. But this one isn't trying so hard to just deliver um, a scripted ideology, which the other books seem to be more focused on, and those seem to be in the forefront in the way that the storytelling is delivered there. Here, it is much less so, and I think to the book's strength that it takes a backseat to the actual character development that this issue in particular focused on.
And also the giant monster. Matt, you're a myth guy. What did you? I want to get your thought on what did you think of the tetracide? Because they it's clearly like something they made up, but like they're framing it literally in a Grecian urn. So they want to like they still want to borrow the ethos of Greek myths and such. But what do you
Yeah, it
think
was
of that
nice to get
monster?
a full page with a black figure base, you know, painting. That was that was a nice detail. Yeah, the chthonic, like, honestly, I've never been a huge fan of, like, squid monster stuff. Like, it just feels like it's lower shelf. Uh,
Oh, I love squid monsters.
yeah, I know. But it doesn't feel particularly Greek, even though I appreciated the Grecian framing of it. But again, like, I think the seriousness of it comes from what the character figures have to let us know about
Mhm.
what the stakes are. And I think they were very effectively portrayed. And to the point of, how this is turning out to be a stronger offering than what we're getting with Absolute Batman or Superman. I isn't it funny that even if we'd like to see more from the male characters, it's because I think we're actually starting to admire what's happening with this story arc with Wonder Woman. We really think that it wouldn't diminish, because she has that self-sacrificial, selfless attitude, that she's really willing to go the distance and, you know, sacrifice elements of herself, of her own body, for other people, without second thought, really. Uh, that means that we could there's plenty of room for other, cool characters to be around her, and that wouldn't, eclipse what she's doing, centrally. So it's nice to see that the main character, the title character, is doing such good things, hitting all these interesting notes. And also interestingly, it's neat that this is proving that the absolute kind of Elseworlds reimagining thing can work, because clearly a lot of things got changed here. What if we inverted a lot of the stuff that we know and love about, classic Wonder Woman? Apparently it can still work for Wonder Woman in particular, so long as those, again, like, key, I mean, really superhero themes, things that are core to DC character superheroes in particular, are ringing very strongly and truly, with that legendary commitment to, uh, selfless heroism. That's coming in stronger here than the other offerings. I think it's proving that you can play around with stuff on the edges, and you can get some neat, output as a result, so long as you have that center point.
So, I do have a couple of theory points. Uh, and it's interesting, like, to be actually like excited to speculate. So they imply that to get out of hell, someone has to cast a spell where you have to like sacrifice a part of yourself. So Wonder Woman sacrifices her arm, and she kind of comes up with a sort of magical prosthesis. That looks like a normal arm, but when she loses it, she has to then like regenerate it essentially. So it's um, so she ends up having to have like a temporary like robotic uh prosthesis. But she's here on Earth in our dimension, which means someone else had to sacrifice something, and the only person who's left in hell with her was Cersei, her adopted mother. So what did Cersei give up, in order to send her here? I'm
Yeah.
wondering if we're gonna get did Cersei because Cersei isn't as strong as Diana. Did Cersei die to get her here? Did she lose? Was it enough to her to lop? Because it was very clear that Diana was, it took a very Herculean effort to lop off her own arm. It was the type of injury you couldn't just shrug off. So I'm wondering, and I kind of like that our hand has not been held. But it's very clear that the seeds are being planted to kind of imply, okay, she's trapped in hell. How did she get out? We show that you get out of hell by sacrifice. So I think Cersei, paid a price, which would also be would be an interesting, change of pace for that character, right? To show her being selfless and heroic. So Kelly Thompson is teasing some things there that I think are very interesting.
So final thoughts, guys. Matt C., what did you think of Absolute Wonder Woman issue 3?
Yeah, a great story that's really coalescing into something pretty strong. A lot of notes that were laid down in earlier issues are actually coming into a pretty strong theme now. We didn't touch on the art. Once again, I think the art is actually kind of it's fun in a way. This is the sort of like hairy hatching technique that was big in the 2010s and like first second comics, or maybe some Dark Horse, and it's kind of neat to see it on DC, and it on a, for a heroine, for a feminine figure like this. I think it's kind of neat too. There's just a lot of really interesting, neat details that are happening here, that it's actually making it feel like it's being drawn by someone who likes to draw. It's being written by someone who cares about this particular character. It has a lot of intentionality. I think there are some risks being taken to make sure that this character is being protected and maintained and stewarded. And I think it's shining through in a lot of interesting ways.
Twitless.
Yeah, I just echo sentiments I think we've all shared, which I think is, really interesting that we have a strong consensus on this one. I think this is a pretty strong showing, not perfect, and we'll see where it goes, but it's really interesting that after the first couple of issues, and this is something I've noticed with the Absolute line in general, I think that regardless of how they really do play out, it does seem that they've taken at least 2 or more issues to really like find their footing. And so, like I said, I think it took a couple of issues for Absolute Batman to find a footing. I'm still hoping that Superman can land that, but it's kind of neat to see that after 3 issues, Wonder Woman's finding her stride. So I'm actually pretty excited. And honestly, I love seeing superheroes fight giant, terrifying monsters. I love the Lovecraftian horror and fighting it and doing it in a way that isn't just ironic. So I like her fighting the giant Tetracide. I want to see how that plays out.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.